In the frigid winter of 1865, Carmen Delgado, 18 years old with dark, unruly hair that framed her face like a storm cloud, stood at the threshold of her childhood home in the Colorado Territory. Once vibrant with laughter, the abode now lay shrouded in sorrow, populated by shadows that whispered of better days long gone. The air was dense, thick with grief and despair, pressing down on her like the heavy wool blankets her mother used to wrap around her on cold nights. The frosty windows not only obscured her view of the outside world, but seemed to reflect the gloom that had settled over her family's life since her father's untimely death. Within the cramped living space, the harsh voices of her uncles filled the air, arguments escalating into a cacophony that echoed in her ears with painful clarity. Each harsh word felt like a knife, slicing through the already frayed fabric of her heart. "We can't keep her here," one uncle bellowed, his voice as rough as the unforgiving Colorado timber. "These debts are suffocating us. We have to act before it's too late." "If she's such a burden, why not do away with her?" retorted the other uncle, his tone dripping with contempt. "Might as well sell her off like some livestock and end this misery once and for all." Carmen felt her stomach twist at the thought. She had always been taught that family meant something, that kinship was a bond forged through love, loyalty, and sacrifice. Yet here she was, standing on the brink of becoming nothing more than a commodity, to be bartered and sold for the sake of her family's financial misfortunes. As their argument raged on, she pressed her knuckles against the splintered doorframe, struggling to maintain her composure. Outside, she could hear the laughter of the neighbors, a mocking chorus that mingled with her sense of despair. To them, she was but a failed investment, a clumsy burden that had to be cast off to alleviate the weight of her father's inadequacies. "Mateo Santosa?" one uncle declared suddenly, the name slicing through the air like a knife. It sent a chill racing down her spine. A stranger known to provoke fear and intrigue in equal measure. "They say he's a recluse, but he's a worthy option. Marrying her off to him would settle our debts and leave us free of this burden." Carmen's heart clenched tightly in her chest, each beat echoing with an urgency woven from dread. The idea of being tied to a man shrouded in mystery was unfathomable and terrifying. This was it, she thought. The copious dreams of freedom, laughter, and adventure that had lived in her heart were fading like the evening sun. Would her reflection, once vibrant and full of joy, now be replaced by a shadow, a ghost of who she once was? "No!" The word erupted from her lips like a flame igniting dry kindling. She felt the surprise of their reaction, their eyes widening in disbelief as if they had forgotten that she could voice her own thoughts. "You cannot do this! You can't sell me off like I'm some object!" Her voice wavered, quivering with indignation, as a small rumble of strength filled her chest, combating the deep currents of despair. What good was being a Delgado if her entire identity was being destroyed by the very people she trusted to protect her? The tension in the room thickened, crackling like the frost swirling outside. "Think carefully, girl," one uncle warned, his grin sinister. "You think you have any say in this? Your father's debts are your chains now. You are nothing more than a transaction for us to resolve this folly." Chains. The word felt like ice, wrapping around her heart and squeezing with unforgiving might. She wanted to scream, to rage against the injustice that threatened to shatter her spirit, yet fear wove its icy fingers around her throat, stifling her voice and paralyzing her resolve. As the voices clamored outside her thoughts, Carmen felt the cold grip of despair wrapping itself around her, even as a flicker of defiance ignited within her breast. The chains they spoke of would not bind her forever, she silently vowed. In that moment of rebellion, she realized that perhaps this would not be the end of her dreams, but an opportunity to carve her own path. Somehow she would find a way to reshape her destiny. With uncertainty gnawing at her insides, she resolved to confront what lay ahead. Maybe, just maybe, there was a future woven into the fabric of her harsh new reality, an unexpected thread that could lead her toward her own choosing. The flicker of hope ignited, daring her to visualize a world beyond the bleak one that encased her. As her uncles resumed their argument, their words cloaked in frustration and greed, Carmen stepped through the door and into the cold world outside. The bitter wind lashed against her cheeks, stinging as sharply as the reality she was leaving behind. Each step toward the cabin of Mateo Santosa felt heavy, laden with the weight of her past, yet all too pressing against the uncertain future that loomed ahead. The rugged landscape unfolded before her. Towering pines rose against the vast sky, their branches swaying like the hands of fate calling her closer. In the heart of the mountains, she felt a tug of both fear and anticipation. a collision between the known and the unknown. She was being uprooted from everything familiar, like a sapling torn from its soil. As she neared the cabin, the winter sun glinted through the trees, casting fleeting beams of warmth against the frigid air. Despite her apprehension, a small ember of curiosity flickered within her heart. The rustic cabin appeared like a fortress, standing resilient against the elements. Could it protect her from the tempest of her past? When she finally reached the door, her pulse quickened in trepidation. Should she knock, or would she be met with scorn? The chill seeped deeper into her bones, and doubt clawed at her insides, tugging her toward retreat. But before she could turn back, she raised her hand and rapped against the heavy wooden door, the sound echoing in the stillness around her. The woods hushed, as if holding its breath in anticipation. The door creaked open, revealing Mateo Santosa, an imposing figure with a mane of hair that framed his rugged face. His eyes were dark pools reflecting the life he had endured, clear and deeply introspective, hinting at sorrows not yet shared. She felt a shiver course through her as he stepped into the light, casting shadows that danced like memories on the walls surrounding them. "Welcome," he said, his voice low and resonant, carrying the weight of mountains. Carmen stood frozen, fear and curiosity intertwining like living vines, tangling her thoughts as she took in the presence before her. This man, this stranger, was a repository of untold stories, of heartache and resilience. Perhaps he was more than the rumors whispered about him. As she entered the sanctuary of his cabin, warmth enveloped her immediately, contrasting sharply with the biting wind outside. Flames danced wildly in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the walls, lined with handmade crafts. The smell of earth and wood mixed with something rich simmering in the pot, igniting her senses after a long, grueling journey. Carmen took a breath and silently hoped that somewhere beneath his rough exterior lay a gentleness, a flicker of compassion waiting to break free. Perhaps here, in this solitary cabin, she could unravel her story anew, a story intertwined with the promise of change, of understanding, and of rediscovery. As the door creaked shut behind her, sealing away the world she knew, Carmen felt an unfamiliar thrill in the pit of her stomach. She was ready to embrace whatever journey awaited her among the rugged hills and lofty peaks, chasing the little flickers of hope that whispered in the shadows of her heart. The moment the door settled into place, the sound of the outside world, the biting wind, the distant calls of wildlife, faded into a soothing, crackling warmth. Carmen took a tentative step further into the cabin, her senses awakening as the aroma of simmering stew enveloped her. It was as if the cabin had been forged from the very earth itself, sturdy logs, mossy stones, and the gentle embrace of a fire that smelled of cedar and pine. "Please, take a seat by the fire," Mateo gestured, his demeanor a careful blend of hospitality and restraint. "You must be weary from your journey." Carmen nodded, her heart still racing amidst the softness of the space. In spite of the tightness in her throat, she moved toward the hearth, where the flames flickered and danced, illuminating the room with an inviting glow. She sank into a worn but comfortable chair, her muscles relaxing for the first time since she'd left her home. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice barely a whisper as she wrapped her arms around herself, absorbing the newfound warmth. Mateo settled on the opposite side of the small table, his gaze steady as he studied her. The silence between them felt charged, each heartbeat echoing in the stillness. "Do you mind if I ask what brings you here?" Mateo's voice was low, thoughtful, his eyes probing yet gentle. Carmen hesitated. She could share the truth of her situation, of the terrible choices her family had laid upon her, but fear coursed through her, holding her tongue. Instead, she opted for a safer path. I was hoping for a fresh start," she said, her gaze drifting to the swirling flames. "I need to find my own way." Mateo nodded slowly, his expression reflective. "A fresh start is often sought in these parts, but it isn't easy. The mountains hold secrets of their own, and they can be unforgiving." His words, steeped in honesty, sent a shiver through her. She was treading on the edge of the unknown, stepping away from the chains that had tethered her life in the most suffocating manner. "I know this isn't how life was supposed to be," she confessed, locking her eyes with his. "But it's all I have left." Mateo leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, considering her words. "And what do you believe life should be?" Apprehension wrapped around her chest, but Carmen summoned her courage. "Life should be vibrant, full of possibility," she said, her voice trembling but persistent. It shouldn't be a negotiation at the hands of others. I want freedom. Freedom to choose my own future. His brow furrowed slightly, the flickering firelight reflecting the storm of thoughts swirling behind his dark eyes. Freedom is a double-edged sword. It brings the possibility of joy, yes, but it also carries heavy burdens, he replied. What are you willing to do to maintain that freedom? Carmen opened her mouth to respond, but her words caught in her throat, tangled in her muddled thoughts. She'd never had to consider the price of freedom. At that moment, the weight of her choices settled heavily upon her shoulders, an iron yoke tightening around her resolve. She stammered, caught in a moment of revelation. I will do whatever it takes. He seemed to consider her words carefully before finally nodding with a hint of approval. Then let's discuss how you might earn that freedom, he said, his voice firm yet supportive. Over the next hour, they spoke of life in the mountains, of the skills she could learn to survive, thrive, and create a life that was wholly her own. Mateo began to share with her his knowledge of survival, of tracking animals, and of foraging plants that could sustain them during harsh winters. In his company, Carmen felt a flicker of confidence begin to blossom, filling her heart with every piece of wisdom he imparted. The conversation flowed easily, alleviating the weight of her previous fears. Carmen's laughter found its way into the space between them, carefree and light, a sound she hadn't heard from her own lips for far too long. Mateo responded with a slight, measured smile, something genuine flickering behind his tempered facade. As the sun dipped low and shadows grew long around them, Mateo stood, moving to a nearby shelf lined with small jars. I have something for you, he said, pulling one from the shelf. The container held a vibrant green substance that sparkled enticingly in the firelight. What is it? Carmen asked, intrigued. Bear grease, he replied, a hint of amusement playing at his lips. It can be used for skin ailments and helps protect against the cold. You'll find it useful in this climate. Her fingers brushed against the cool glass jar as she took it from his hand. The weight felt comforting, promising against the frigid chill that still clung to her skin. Thank you, she said, warmth blooming in her chest as gratitude washed over her. Let's get you warmed up then. I can teach you to make bread in the morning. It takes the chill away, Mateo replied, moving toward the stove to check the stew simmering before the fire. Bread? She echoed, her curiosity piqued. Nothing fancy, he said, a smirk breaking through his composed demeanor. Just a staple at the homestead. Cooking helps build strength and keeps you grounded. In that case, I'd like to learn, she said with newfound excitement. The thought of kneading dough and sharing laughter in a simple meal felt monumental in her heart, a small yet vital piece of the freedom she craved. As they prepared the meal, tossing in vegetables and spices with an easy familiarity, something shifted in the air, a palpable warmth that banished the chill of her past. Carmen found herself slowly shedding the layers of fear and anxiety she carried, realizing that the life Mateo described was not only full of possibility, but hers for the taking. As they sat down to enjoy the hearty stew, candlelight flickered and danced around them, illuminating their new partnership with an air of promise. Mateo shared tales of his own past, a life diverging from the familiar. She learned of his losses, the pain he carried in silence, and the solitude that had shaped the man before her. Forced to relinquish her own burdens and fears, Carmen opened up about her life back in Colorado, recounting the details of her family's struggles and her deep desire to finally own her fate. The connection between them deepened, their shared stories unfolding like the branches of the trees outside, merging together among the roots of their histories. After dinner, they sat by the fire, warmth radiating throughout the space, casting a glow upon their faces. The conversation flowed freely, laughter spilling forth, a sound that felt both foreign and familiar to Carmen's ears. Mateo shared stories of the mountain's beauty and terror, the wild creatures that inhabited the land, and how every day held a new lesson. Hours melted away as they spoke, and for the first time in months, Carmen felt a flicker of hope igniting in her heart, a sense of belonging she hadn't realized she craved. Mateo's rugged demeanor began to feel less like a barrier and more like a channel to a deeper understanding of the world around her. Yet, even in the warmth of the cabin, unease lingered at the edges of her mind. What would tomorrow bring? Would the bitter winds of her past follow her even into these mountains? The question hovered, unvoiced, yet finding its way into her thoughts like an unwelcome ghost. Breaking through her quiet contemplation, Mateo's voice beckoned her back to the present. We will begin your lessons at dawn. There's much to learn, he said, his gaze steady, holding an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "Lessons," she murmured, excitement battling with apprehension. "Yes, what is it you wish to learn? The mountains teach us all their secrets, but you must be open to their guidance," he replied, his tone turning solemn. "Every path leads somewhere. You must choose where to begin." In the flickering firelight, with his words hanging solemnly in the air, Carmen began to realize that freedom was not just a declaration, but a choice, an intricate weave of decision and action, hope and resilience. The journey ahead would be hers to navigate, each step forward illuminating the darkness she had once felt trapped within. With those thoughts swirling in her mind, she eventually settled down for the night, exhaustion wrapping her in a comforting cocoon. As she drifted off to sleep, the weary weight of her past lingered, casting long shadows, but the promise of tomorrow's training shimmered like daylight behind a storm cloud, rekindling the flicker of freedom that had taken root in her heart. This concludes Block 2, The Encounter, first contact with approximately 10,034 characters. If you're satisfied with this block, we can continue with Block 3. Trust building, transformation begins. With dawn breaking over the horizon, Carmen stirred from her slumber, the golden light streaming through the cabin windows casting a warm glow across her face. For the first time in ages, she felt rested and full of purpose. The memories of her past were still there, but they had begun to recede into the background, overshadowed by the hope that had taken root within her. Today was about new beginnings and the lessons that would shape her future. Carmen rose from the narrow bed and stretched her limbs, shaking off remnants of sleep. The scent of pine and earth swirled around her, and she recalled Mateo's words from the night before. Today would hold the promise of discovery. She dressed quickly in layers, eager to meet the day ahead, and as she stepped into the kitchen, she was greeted by the smell of something delicious. "Good morning, Carmen," Mateo called from the stove, stirring a pot simmering over the fire. "Breakfast is almost ready." "Good morning," she replied, moving over to help as she had the day before. Her actions felt more confident now, each motion cascading into the next as they prepared their meal together, the rhythm familiar and soothing. "What are we having?" "Oatmeal with some wild blueberries. I thought we could keep it simple since we'll need our strength for the lessons ahead," he said with a playful smile. "Sounds perfect to me," she replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. The generous nature of his hospitality brightened her spirits further, deepening her appreciation for the man who had opened his home to her without hesitation. They quickly finished breakfast, and as they sat down to eat, Carmen felt the warmth of belonging wrap around her like a blanket. There was something pleasant about sharing meals, a domesticity that had remained foreign for far too long. They talked freely, exchanging stories and laughter. The unease she had carried began to dissipate with every word, replaced by a sense of camaraderie. After finishing, Mateo stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Ready for your first lesson?" "Absolutely," Carmen replied with enthusiasm, the anticipation bubbling within her. They exited the cabin, stepping into the brisk morning air. The world outside was alive with the sounds of nature. A distant rustle of leaves and the soft chirping of birds echoed in the crisp freshness of the day. Mateo led Carmen to a nearby clearing where the sun filtered down through the branches, casting dappled light over the forest floor. "Today we'll begin with fire building," he instructed as they arrived. "It's essential, not only for warmth and cooking, but also for protection." He began to explain the various components of fire: tinder, kindling, and fuel wood. Carmen listened intently, her fingers tracing the rough bark of nearby trees as she absorbed the knowledge like a sponge. Mateo demonstrated how to gather proper materials, explaining the qualities that made them effective for starting fires. "Remember," he said firmly, "you must always respect fire. It can be a source of comfort or an uncontrollable force. It's all about balance." Carmen nodded, fully aware of the responsibility inherent in mastering this skill. The relationship between fire and nature was delicate and vital, a connection she yearned to understand. As they gathered materials together, Mateo showed her the different ways to create sparks using flint. "Here, take this," he said, passing her a piece of flint. "You'll create a spark against steel. The key is to strike it with purpose, but not with too much force." With her heart racing, Carmen positioned the flint against steel, mimicking his earlier actions. Sparks flew, but it took a moment for them to catch onto the dry tinder she'd prepared. When she finally succeeded, a small flame flickered to life, eliciting a joyous gasp from her lips. "I did it!" she exclaimed, a grin spreading across her face. "Excellent!" Mateo praised as he crouched beside her, pleasure evident in his eyes. Now you must nurture it carefully. Add kindling gradually, providing enough fuel to grow the fire without suffocating it. As she tended to the flames, Carmen felt empowered, cradling the fire with her hands as if it were a living being. Each crackle sparked a surge of energy within her. This was not merely about survival, it was about mastering the elements and reclaiming her agency. She was no longer passive, she was active in her renewal. After a lengthy session building and maintaining the fire, Mateo turned to her. Next, we must forage for food to sustain us. You'll be learning to identify both edible plants and potential threats in the wild. Carmen's heart leapt at the thought of adventure, and she felt the weight of anticipation fill her with eagerness. Where do we start? Mateo gestured for her to follow as they moved deeper into the woods. The vibrant greenery enveloped them, and as they walked, he pointed out various plants, teaching her to distinguish between the edible and the harmful. Here, this is clover, sweet and good for a snack, he explained, kneeling down to pluck a few leaves. And over there you'll see stinging nettles. Though they can be good to eat when cooked, they must be handled with care. With each passing hour, Carmen's confidence blossomed as she learned to identify roots, berries, nuts, and herbs, including their medicinal properties. The forest's bounty felt like an unending treasure. Each discovery ignited her passion for nature and knowledge. Is it always this plentiful? She asked, her excitement palpable as she filled her basket with more plants than she had expected. Depends on the season and the weather, he replied. But with understanding, anyone can learn to find sustenance in the wild. Carmen could hardly imagine a life lived in such harmony with nature. As they ventured back toward the cabin, a renewed sense of purpose lingered in the air between them, like a pact forged through learning and shared moments. Upon reaching the cabin, Mateo set to work preparing a meal with the foods they had foraged. Carmen watched closely, soaking in the details of his movements as he chopped, stirred, and seasoned. Cooking is an extension of who we are, Mateo shared while he worked. It's about bringing together elements that are otherwise unremarkable. Trust your instincts as you prepare food. Each ingredient carries its own story. Even the simplest ingredients can become something beautiful, Carmen murmured, reflecting on his words as she absorbed the scents permeating the air. After the meal was ready, they shared a lively lunch, savoring the fruits of their labor. Carmen felt invigorated, each bite deeper than mere sustenance. These were the tastes of freedom, of a life reclaimed. As they sat, talking and laughing, the bond between them deepened, the trust they had cultivated evident in their easy exchanges. She found herself sharing pieces of her past amid laughter, revealing the layers of her story, her struggles with identity, and the burdens she had carried. "I've felt trapped for so long," she confessed softly, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "But this place, being in the wild, it feels alive. I finally feel like I'm seeing the world through fresh eyes." Mateo listened intently, nodding, understanding her journey. The wild can teach us about resilience, about our relationship with ourselves and the world. The mountains have their own way of revealing truths that we bury within us, he remarked, his gaze distant for a moment. The air was thick with honesty, a fragile thread carrying the weight of unspoken understanding between them. Carmen's heart swelled as she forged a deeper connection with him. He was not merely a mentor or guide, but a partner in this shared experience. After lunch, the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the land. The time of the day felt sacred, pregnant with opportunity and the promise of transformation. "All right, what's next?" Carmen asked, her spirit buoyed by what they had accomplished. Mateo smiled, clearly pleased with her eager spirit. "Some outdoor skills. We'll practice knot tying and learn about setting traps for food. It's all part of the survival toolkit and will help you become more at ease with your surroundings." "Let's do it," she replied, determination clear in her voice. For the rest of the afternoon, they worked outdoors, with Mateo teaching her different knots that would serve various purposes, from securing a bundle to creating a shelter. His instructions were clear and patient, breaking down complex techniques into manageable pieces. Carmen's hands felt clumsy at first, but soon she found her rhythm, fingers deftly manipulating the ropes and feeling a growing sense of accomplishment as she tied each knot with precision. "Very good," Mateo praised, nodding with approval as she demonstrated her progress. "You're learning quickly. Each knot holds a significance, much like the connections we forge with others. Strong and secure bonds enable us to navigate the intricate web of life, even when challenges arise. Like our bond? Carmen asked, the question slipping out before she fully considered it. She watched him, gauging his reaction. Yes, Mateo replied, his gaze steady. Just like that. We pull together to catch one another if we falter. Her heart fluttered at the weight of his words, pregnant with meaning and connection. Carmen felt the space between them shift, like the breeze that altered the course of a leaf mid-fall. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the woods in strokes of golden light, they paused, enjoying the beauty of the fading day together, the air electric with the unspoken. With the day's teachings laid behind them, they returned to the cabin, where the fire crackled loudly, drawing them closer into its warmth. Mateo prepared a simple dinner, and they found comfort in the familiarity of their routine, the meals heavy with the essence of their hard work. As they sat together, reflecting on how far she'd come, Carmen felt a pang of disbelief. I never imagined I would feel this way, she murmured, taking Mateo's gaze. I finally feel free. I don't fear my past as much anymore. Mateo's expression softened, and he leaned forward, his eyes sincere. Remember that healing takes time. Continue to embrace your journey, and you will discover that every step nurtures your spirit. You are becoming. With that simple realization, Carmen felt resolved, ready to tackle whatever lay ahead. Leaning into the warmth of the evening, she now felt the flickering of hope burn brightly within her, not just for freedom, but for the understanding that she had a life to shape anew. As they settled down for the night, the fire casting dreamy shadows around them, Carmen closed her eyes, feeling secure and fulfilled. She embraced the reality of her transformation, ready to face each new day and the uncertainty it brought. In the twilight of the mountains, she felt herself opening up, no longer defined by her past, but rather embracing the possibilities of the path ahead. The dawn broke like a promise, spilling its golden light through the cracks in the cabin's wooden walls. Carmen awoke to the soft glow illuminating her room, her heart lifted by the peace enveloping her. The mountains were alive again, brimming with possibilities. She blinked sleep from her eyes and stretched, revealing the fluidity of muscles free from the tension that had once gripped her heart. After dressing swiftly, she stepped outside, the chill of the morning air awakening her senses. Mateo was already tending to the fire, stirring the coals with a practiced ease. The aroma of brewing coffee wafted toward her, promising warmth and comfort that matched the incoming sun's caress. "Good morning," she called, a smile blossoming across her face. "Morning, Carmen," he replied, returning her smile. "Ready for another day of learning in the mountains?" "Absolutely. What's the plan today?" she asked, her anticipation bubbling over. Mateo motioned for her to join him at the table. "Today we'll focus on finding wild, edible plants. Afterward, we'll sharpen your tracking skills. It's vital not just to survive out here, but to thrive." Carmen felt a thrill race through her. The knowledge that had felt foreign just days ago was now sparking something within her, a burgeoning confidence that promised growth and adventure. They settled at the table where Mateo had laid out a breakfast spread filled with warm food, a hearty combination of eggs they had gathered from nearby hens, seasoned with herbs from their last foraging excursion. As they ate, Carmen took time to contemplate her journey so far. Each meal shared was a reflection of her hard-won independence and partnership with Mateo, a bond that was deepening with every shared experience. "I can't believe how much I've changed already," she mused, pulling the soft eggs apart with her fork. "When I first arrived, I felt like I was barely surviving, just trying to cope with everything. Now I actually feel like I'm starting to flourish." Mateo nodded, his eyes gleaming with approval. "You've embraced your journey. Healing takes courage, and you have shown that time and again. Remember, every small step leads to growth. This place offers you the space to recognize that truth." After breakfast, they prepared to venture into the forest, equipped with woven baskets for collecting herbs and plants. Carmen felt a surge of electricity in the air, a mix of excitement and determination as they stepped out into the wild beauty of the forest, sunlight filtering through the trees in dappled patterns on the ground. "Understanding what kind of plants are around you is essential," Mateo instructed as they moved. "It's not just about gathering food, it's about cultivating a relationship with the land. Everything has its season, its purpose." "Like us," Carmen replied, and Mateo turned to her, eyebrow raised, intrigued by her metaphor. She continued, "We are learning to find our places too. We're not just living in the mountains, we're becoming part of them." "Exactly. he replied, his voice rich with warmth. You're beginning to weave your own narrative into the tapestry of this wilderness. As they traversed the grove, Mateo pointed out various plants, sharing knowledge that flowed from him like a wellspring. Here's chamomile. It can soothe pain and improve sleep, he demonstrated as he gently touched the fragrant flowers. And this one is dandelion. Not only is it edible, but it's also rich in nutrients. Carmen's fingers brushed over the leaves with newfound reverence. Every plant tells a story, she said, a light dawning in her eyes. This is amazing. They moved deeper into the woods, climbing over fallen trees and skirting around thickets as their conversations ebbed and flowed, a dance of discovery and connection. As they foraged, Carmen noticed the interplay of sun and shadow, how life thrived in the wild. The vibrant colors of flowers and greens painted the ground like a living canvas. Mateo watched her closely, noticing the determination in her movements. You're doing well. Soon you'll be able to identify plants with your eyes closed, he encouraged, infusing confidence into her budding curiosity. After hours of gathering, Carmen's basket brimmed with greens and herbs. Together they sat on a fallen log, taking a moment to appreciate their surroundings. The forest was alive with sound. The chatter of woodland creatures and the rustling of leaves danced around them in harmony. Can we cook with these? Can I try? Carmen asked, her excitement palpable. She was eager to transform her knowledge into action, keen to see the tangible results of her labor. Of course, perfect timing too, Mateo replied, a smile creasing his face. Food nourishes both body and spirit. Let's return to the cabin and create a meal from our efforts. The energy of their shared venture ebbed as they walked back, only to be reignited in the cozy warmth of the cabin. Carmen took charge, her heart racing as she set the herbs and greens on the table for selection, connecting the ingredients to the stories they had gathered in the wild. Mateo joined her, sharing tips on preparation and cooking methods as they worked side by side. Here, we'll create a simple herbal concoction, he explained, demonstrating how to dissect the plants carefully. Cooking is an expression of gratitude for the land's generosity. Carmen chopped and sliced, feeling a spark ignite within her as she engaged in each step. With Mateo's guidance, she added herbal twists, the aromas swirling together into a beautiful bouquet of scents. Each flavor felt vibrant, alive, reinforcing the connection she was building with the earth. They sat down to enjoy the fruits of their labor, the quietness of the cabin enfolding them with a sense of peace. As they tucked into their meal, Carmen reflected on how this experience was so much richer than she had anticipated. I never imagined food could come from me gathering it like this. It makes it so much more meaningful, she said, savoring each bite. Mateo chuckled warmly. You'll find with every meal prepared from the heart, you nurture not just the body but also the soul. This connection transforms cooking into an art form, a celebration of life and nature. As they finished their meal, a sense of camaraderie filled the room. They shared laughter, recounted stories of their successes and failures in the kitchen, bonding over the warmth of friendship. The lines separating teacher and student began to blur. They were equals sharing in their journeys. After the plates were cleared, Mateo said, "Now it's time for your next lesson, tracking." Carmen's eyes sparkled as her excitement flared once again. "What will we do?" "Follow me," he said, leading her outside. They embarked toward a nearby clearing, a place where signs of wildlife were abundant. As they arrived, Mateo crouched next to several sets of tracks imprinted in the soft earth. "Observe these closely," he instructed. "Understanding animal movements will enhance your awareness of life in the wilderness." Carmen knelt beside him, her heart pounding with anticipation. She scrutinized the tracks, gently brushing her fingers against the edges. "These are deer," she noted, a thrill coursing through her. "They seem to head toward that thicket." "Excellent observation," Mateo praised. "Now what tells you this?" "The depth of the track and the way it veers off toward water," she replied confidently. "Good. Tracking isn't just about identifying prints. It's about piecing together the story of the land. Why are they moving toward that thicket? What are they looking for?" He paused, letting her consider. "What instincts do you need to survive in a place like this?" As sunlight began to fade, they followed the trails, careful to make minimal noise. Carmen felt a connection grow deeper as they pieced together stories written in the soil. Mateo guided her through the signs, the disturbance in the foliage, the sounds of rustling nearby, the interaction of animals in the world around them, mobility, patience, and awareness. Each lesson came alive as she began to apply the teachings. Mateo's mentorship unlocked parts of her she never knew existed, finding strength in her instincts, trusting the soil beneath her fingers, observing the dance between daylight and dusk, and discovering she was a part of it all. Eventually, they settled beside a quiet stream, where the water flowed gently over smooth stones, letting the sound surround them. "You're starting to think like a part of the wilderness," Mateo said, nodding appreciatively. "But remember, it's also about respect. Each creature, each plant plays a role in the circle of life." "I'm realizing that," she said, her heart swelling with gratitude. "And it's not just about survival. It's about understanding and connecting with everything that exists here." Mateo smiled knowingly, and something deeper passed between them. A shared understanding, a bond strengthened by facing the wildness together. As they made their way back toward the cabin, the weight of their connection grew heavy with unspoken possibilities. Back at the cabin, as night crept in and the sky darkened to a blanket of twinkling stars, they settled beside the crackling fire. Carmen pondered over the day's learning while enjoying the warmth of the flames. Mateo turned to her, and they shared a comfortable silence, their thoughts mingling with the night air. "Today feels significant," Carmen said, her voice low. "Is this how change begins?" "The journey is unique for each individual," he replied, his gaze steady. "Your path is unfolding, and you're embracing the challenges that arise. That is progress." Carmen felt a thrill of empowerment rush through her. "This place, this freedom, it's transforming me. I'm not just learning how to survive. I'm finding my strength and my voice." Mateo regarded her with pride. "I see that, Carmen. You're beginning to enter the rhythm of the wilderness. It flows through you now. With every lesson, you're carving a new identity based on resilience and growth." As the fire cracked and popped, Carmen looked into its depths and felt the flickers of hope dancing among the embers. She was becoming someone she had always wanted to be, a survivor, a part of nature, and above all, a person who could redefine her story. "Thank you for guiding me," she said sincerely, a warmth flooding her heart. "Your wisdom has changed my life in ways I never thought possible." "You've changed it as much as I have. You put in the work," Mateo replied, his voice tenderly affirming. "Embrace it fully." And so, as night enveloped the mountains, Carmen settled beneath the stars, feeling not just secure, but at home among them. The past no longer loomed over her like a ghost. Instead, it danced around her like shadows, reminding her of where she had been, but also illuminating the path of where she was headed. Tomorrow would bring more lessons, more discoveries, and more bonding, and she felt ready to embrace whatever challenges the mountains had yet to reveal. This revised version of Block 4, Deepening Bond, Backstory Completion, now includes approximately 12,111 characters. If you're satisfied with this block, we can continue with Block 5, Rising Tension, Confrontation Approaches. The early morning light spilled through the cabin windows, illuminating the wood walls and casting a warm glow on everything it touched. But that peaceful moment shattered abruptly with the sharp crack of a gunshot echoing through the stillness of the mountains. Carmen's heart leapt, and she shot upright in bed, instantly aware that their sanctuary was no longer safe. "Mateo!" she gasped, adrenaline flooding her system as she grabbed the small knife she had kept nearby. The cabin felt stifling, and she could hear Mateo's rapid movements outside, the door creaking slightly as he pushed it open. "Stay inside," he commanded, his voice tight with urgency as he surveyed the area. Carmen watched him, her mind racing. What was happening? "Who's out there?" she asked, peering through the door's narrow opening, but the scene was foreboding. All she could see were the silhouettes of trees swaying in the breeze, their branches whispering secrets. "Just stay back," Mateo called, his focus shifting. Carmen's heart pounded fiercely against her ribcage. She felt a surge of fear mixed with the instinct to protect. She could not just sit by while Mateo faced whatever danger lurked outside. Pushing through the door, she stepped onto the porch, the chill of the morning air hitting her like a cold slap. "Mateo, what's going on?" "Get back," he snapped, eyes scanning the tree line. But before she could retreat, a harsh voice rang out from the woods. "Mateo, we have to do something," she urged, a desperate determination rising within her. She gripped her knife tightly. "Carmen, get inside now," he urged again, but his voice wavered with tension. Suddenly the voice returned, sharper. "You'll regret this, old man. We're not here to make friends." The threat hung in the air, thick with malice. Carmen's heart raced, and in that moment of fear, something shifted within her. She stepped forward, defiance sparking in her eyes. "I won't let you hurt him," she shouted, adrenaline surging as she positioned herself beside Mateo, the knife trembling in her grasp. The group of men stepped into view, their faces twisted with confidence born from numbers. Carmen's pulse quickened at their sneers, but she held her ground. "You need to leave. This is our home." Mateo turned to her, fear and pride mingling in his gaze. "Carmen, this is dangerous." But she found strength in his eyes. "I can't stand by while you fight alone. We protect what we have." "Cute sentiment, sweetheart," one of the men sneered, taking a step forward, intent on intimidation. "You think you can scare us off?" With a fierce resolve, Carmen raised the knife, its blade reflecting the sunlight like her determination. "We will fight you. You don't have any power here." The lead intruder paused, momentarily thrown by her courage. "Do you really want to die for this old fool?" He laughed, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. In that instant, Mateo lunged forward, refusing to let Carmen face the danger alone. "Leave now," he barked, his voice reverberating with authority. As the tension crackled, the men began to advance, but Carmen's fear morphed into anger. "You'll regret underestimating us," she yelled, stepping forward, determination igniting within her. In a flurry of movement, Mateo sidestepped one of the attackers while Carmen took her chance. She swung her knife, narrowly grazing one of them, causing him to stumble back in surprise. The fight erupted, chaos swirling around them as fists collided and voices rose in resistance. "Carmen, move to the side," Mateo shouted, dodging a blow intended for him. Struggling against the odds, Carmen's instincts kicked in. This was about more than just survival. It was about standing together against the overwhelming threats. Her heart raced as she fought back, the knife now feeling like a part of her. She slipped through the fray, her movements fueled by the adrenaline steering her forward. She could feel Mateo's presence beside her, their bond growing stronger amid the tumult. But the attackers, realizing they were facing determined opponents, faltered momentarily. The surprise in their eyes became evident. A united front formed by one man and one woman was not what they had expected. They hesitated, perhaps recognizing their mistake in underestimating the strength of spirit that lay within the cabin. "Get back!" the lead man shouted, scrambling to maintain control of the situation. "We're not leaving without what we came for." Mateo stood tall, sweat glistening on his forehead, eyes fierce and unyielding. "This is our land, and we'll defend it to our last breath." Carmen took a step forward, emboldened by Mateo's unwavering determination. "Leave now, or face the consequences," she added, voice unwavering despite the fear bubbling within. The lead intruder backed off, uncertainty creeping into his expression as he glanced at his companions. "This isn't over," he spat, gesturing for the others to retreat. As they scattered into the woods, Carmen's heart soared with triumph, yet the realization of what they had just faced crashed down. The chaos began to ebb, and they stood together, panting heavily, surrounded by an eerie stillness that hummed with tension. "Are you okay?" Mateo finally asked, turning his gaze to her with a mixture of relief and concern. "I am," she breathed, still grasping the knife tightly. "We did it." "Together," he affirmed, pride unmistakable in his eyes. But beneath that pride was something else, a reminder that the battle they had just fought could return, perhaps even stronger than before. The shadows of danger loomed large, and Carmen felt a darkness pool in the pit of her stomach. "What if they come back?" she whispered, fear creeping back into her voice. Mateo drew closer, his expression turning serious. "They may, but we're not going to let fear overshadow our gains. We'll prepare, reinforce the cabin, strategize how to protect what we've built here." Carmen nodded, a new resolve settling within her. If they faced down those intruders together today, surely they could pave their way forward, even against the unknown threats ahead. As they began to gather their thoughts amidst the remnants of the confrontation, Carmen felt the adrenaline slowly ebb away. The fight had stoked not just fear, but also a fierce sense of determination, igniting a flame she hadn't realized had been dormant within her. "I'm ready," she said, meeting Mateo's gaze. "I want to fortify our home. We will not let them take anything from us." With that vow echoing in the air, Carmen felt the spirit of the wilderness rise within her. Tomorrow would bring more lessons, not just in survival, but in strength and partnership, reinforcing her resolve to claim their place in the mountains once and for all. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the mountains, but the warmth it offered felt hollow to Carmen. She and Mateo had spent the following day fortifying the cabin, their hands busy while their minds swirled with the aftermath of the confrontation. Every nail driven into the wooden walls, every branch stacked beside their door, was both a shield and a reminder of the threat that loomed just beyond their threshold. "Here," Mateo said, handing Carmen a hammer. "Let's reinforce this side first." His tone was steady, but Carmen could see the flicker of concern in his eyes, a mixture of pride in her resilience and fear for their safety. As they worked, Carmen's mind raced, thoughts tumbling over each other like leaves in the wind. They still had no idea who the intruders were, or if they would return. She felt the weight of that uncertainty pressing down on her, a persistent shadow lurking at the edge of her consciousness. "Do you think they'll come back?" Carmen ventured, trying to keep her voice steady as she pounded the hammer against the wooden beam. Mateo paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's possible. We need to stay vigilant. But I believe if we stand together, we can face whatever comes our way." She nodded, but doubt lingered like a heavy fog. What if this was just the beginning? The confrontations they had faced before? What if those were mere precursors to something greater? Hours passed, and the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon with shades of orange and pink. As they stepped back to admire their work, Carmen felt a flicker of satisfaction counteracting her earlier fears. "I think we did a good job, don't you?" she asked, trying to meet Mateo's gaze with forced brightness. "It's more than just the cabin we fortified," he replied, leaning against the wall. "You fortified yourself as well. You found strength I didn't realize you had." Carmen smiled at his compliment, but the unease hadn't left her. "I just wish I knew what we were dealing with. Who were they? Why did they come here?" "That's a question for later. Right now we need to focus on our safety." His voice was calm, yet reassuring, a steady anchor amidst her spiraling thoughts. Just then, the sound of galloping hooves echoed through the air, growing closer by the second. Alarm shot through Carmen as she turned toward the source of the noise. "Mateo, do you hear that?" Mateo's posture shifted, his gaze locking onto the tree line. "Stay behind me," he instructed, stepping forward as the sound drew nearer. From the edge of the clearing, a rider appeared, dust flying behind him as he approached rapidly. Carmen squinted against the fading sunlight, recognition dawning as the rider drew closer. It was Eli, a local trader known for his unpredictable visits. Eli reined his horse to a halt, nearly skidding in the dirt, eyes wide and brow furrowed. "Mateo! Carmen!" he called out, urgency lacing his tone. "You're in danger!" "What do you mean?" Mateo stepped closer, tension coiling in his muscles. "I saw the group today. They've gathered more men. They plan to come after you, after your land. They're calling you a thief," Eli said, breathless and urgent. Carmen felt cold dread seep into her bones at the word thief. "But we haven't stolen anything. This is our home." "They don't care about the truth. They want what they want," Eli replied, his expression grim. "And they believe you stole it from them. They'll be here soon." Mateo's eyes narrowed. "When?" "Soon. This isn't just some petty dispute," Eli warned. "It's deeply rooted. They'll mobilize, and they'll bring numbers." Carmen's heart raced as the weight of Eli's words enveloped her like a leaden cloak. They had moments, maybe even mere minutes, before the confrontation escalated. "What do we do?" she asked, panic creeping back. "We prepare for battle," Mateo said, resolve igniting in his voice. "We gather what we can. We won't let them take our home without a fight." "But how can we fight them when they're after us for being thieves?" Carmen questioned, despair creeping into her tone. "They won't listen to reason." Eli glanced between them, determination glinting in his eyes. "Sometimes the only way to prove you're not a thief is to stand your ground, to fight for what's yours. We need to convince the townsfolk of your truth, but for now, we need to prepare for whatever they bring." Carmen nodded slowly, a surge of resolve igniting within. "Then let's gather the supplies we can. We'll prepare, knowing that the truth will prevail." As they raced back into the cabin, urgency fueled every action. They assembled supplies, food, weapons, and anything they could use to defend their home. They worked with a fierce determination, hearts pounding, hands moving quickly as Mateo and Eli made plans to set traps around the property while Carmen prepared for a potential showdown. The sun slipped behind the mountains, shadows lengthening as they finished their preparations. Everything felt different now. The cabin, once a sanctuary, was now a fortress. Carmen stood at the door with Mateo and Eli, defiantly watching the fading light. "They may come," she said, voice steady, "but we will face them together." Mateo side-eyed her, a proud smile breaking through the tension. "Together," he affirmed. With the night closing in, Carmen took a deep breath, steeling herself for the battle that awaited them. The wilderness surrounded them, both a shield and a threat, but she felt its essence flowing through her. This was their home, their sanctuary, and she refused to let anyone take it from them without a fight. Tomorrow would bring the dawn, and with it, a reckoning.